How can you find a work-life balance? That's the question that we're going to aim to answer today. Hi everyone, it's Will, and I'm here with another tarot reading. I've pulled out the major arcana from this deck, and we're going to shuffle them in a moment and pull out 3 significator cards. You'll choose one of them, and I'll pair them up with each of these stones. So I've got black agate, selenite, and fluorite. Okay, so I've been shuffling the major arcana prior to beginning. I'll continue that now and think about the question, how can you achieve a work-life balance? How can you achieve a work-life balance? Okay, let's deal out 3 significators. First, we have the Chariot to go with the black agate, the Chariot to go with the black agate, the Sun to go with the selenite, the Sun, and finally Temperance. Temperance will go with the fluorite. Okay, so I'll put the timestamps below. Please take a moment to choose whichever of these calls to you most. The Chariot with the black agate, that's 1. The Sun with the selenite, that's 2. Or Temperance with the fluorite, that's 3. And we'll answer the question, how can you achieve work-life balance? I'll see you in your reading. Okay, group 1, you chose the black agate and the Chariot. So I'll set the stone aside and we'll put the Chariot here. Let's put it up there for the moment. I've shuffled the deck. We've got the whole deck here. And I'm going to continue shuffling now while I think about the Chariot and the question together. So the question, of course, is to what extent or how or what can you do to find a balance in your work life and your life? All right? All right. You chose the Chariot, which makes me think that you are successful, you're keeping things together, you're driving forward in life. These horses that maybe each want to go in a separate direction, you've managed to tame them, at least to some extent. And so instead of zigzagging or going one way or the other, you're managing to hold the reins, so to speak, and get them going in the way you want them to go. Although, of course, when you look at the card, there are no reins, right? The charioteer doesn't really have any control over those horses. And when you look at the position of the wheels, it looks almost like the chariot is prepared to go back and forth, side to side, rather than forward. But we tend to think of this card in terms of success, independence, driving forward in your career and your life more generally. So let's see. I will lay out 3 rows of 3 cards, and let's see what we see. All right, those feel good to me. All right. Okay, so I'm not sure where this goes yet. Here we go. The Emperor. So, how can you achieve a work-life balance? Can you delegate? Is there anything you could be delegating to other people? That's what the Emperor does. The Emperor has the power to over the land, over the kingdom, right? Can do pretty much what he wants within reason, and can tell other people to do stuff that he doesn't want to do much of it. He's got that power. He can use his staff, shall we call that, scepter, to tell others, you should be doing this instead. So that's my first thought. Okay. We've got the Ace of Coins. So maybe this is some money. Maybe the Emperor has some discipline, some structure, some stability with regard to money matters. I think, too, of the way that the Emperor's shield, which he's sort of sitting on almost, is a golden circle, right? And this is also a golden circle, which makes me think putting money matters in front of you, right? Not underneath you, not something you're resting on, but bringing them up in front. That's the other thing that comes to mind. Is there any way that you could be prioritizing your finances a little bit more, maybe by having some discipline or some structure around them in order to find more balance in your life, right? Like, is there a way in which you're working too much, overworking yourself because of money matters? And is there any way of tweaking those money matters through discipline, structure, that kind of thing? Maybe looking at spending. And strength, the force card, the strength card, different decks call it different things. So could the Emperor find or use their discipline with regard to money matters in order to access their own inner strength? That's what this makes me think of. And now I will add, I interpret coins often in terms of money, but they don't have to only be money, right? So this could have to do, if it's not money, it could have to do with behavior, right? The way that you interact with the material world, with the world in life. So if it's not money specifically that is the issue with regard to your work-life balance, is there a behavior issue? Is there a new behavior that you need to have some discipline over, some strength over, right? Like I'm thinking, for example, well, first of all, if you are spending too much time in a new job, for example, is there a way you could find some strength to pare that back? Or maybe you're bored to tears of your job and you've been going out a lot on the weekends. Is there any way that you could find some strength to pare that back to help you find some balance? Seven Swords. Okay. Well, Seven Swords This can mean deception. It can also mean behaving in a way that other people just don't understand. It can also just mean sharpness or focus. Is there a way in which you need to focus your discipline? Underneath the emperor, right? The emperor is a person of action, right? The man of action, but a person of action who's acting out in the public world, in the public sphere, we might say. Keeping an eye on finances or behaviors, keeping an eye on the way that he interacts with the material world. And underneath him, we've got 7 swords. So, is there any way in which you might be deceiving yourself, right? Underneath it all, are you not being totally honest with yourself? Is there some self-deception going on so that you're kind of sitting on top of a bunch of swords that are going to block your way? That's one thing that comes to mind. The other is, if you can honestly say there's not any self-deception happening, maybe you need to just focus more on finding that balance. What's in the middle of the spread? 5 coins. 5 coins in the middle of the spread. So a change in your financial situation, a good change or a bad change. I know folks, especially in the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, tend to think of the 5 of coins as like poverty, right? The loss of money. With the Tarot de Marseille, I read it a little more openly as a change more generally, a disruption, we might say, a disruption of the material world. And disruption can certainly mean poverty, right? But that's not the only interpretation that we can bring to this card. If you're already in poverty, then a disruption to that might be an increase in money, right? And we do certainly see a movement from 1 coin to 5, right? So we've got 5 times as many coins here as we've got up there. So that makes me think of the idea that if there's a way of bringing in more money, that could disrupt things, maybe for the better, but not necessarily for the better, right? Like we can get stuck in trying to get more and more and more money in a way that throws everything off balance. Well, what does the Queen of Batons have to say about all of this? I cannot help but notice the great similarity between the Queen of Batons and the Strength card above. And so, the Queen of Batons is a person, a woman, but I read the court cards, as you all know by now, if you've been watching anything I've done, regardless of gender, right? So to me, this isn't necessarily a woman. It could be a person of any gender. And she likes excitement. She likes to do things kind of impulsively. She's very social. She likes to have a good time. She might be athletic. She's the life of the party, I think, in the tarot deck. If you're going to a party, you want the Queen of Batons around. And so I can't help but think, like, if the Strength card is becoming the Queen of Batons up here, he or she thinks they're strength or force, and they're prying open or closed the lion's mouth. Maybe they should stop doing that, right? And instead grab their baton representing their passion, their desire, right? It can also, the baton can refer to a career, right? The whole suit of batons can refer to the career. So instead of focusing on, shall we say, wrestling with wild animals, maybe there should be more focus on on what really drives you, right? Like what gets you up and out of bed in the morning. So maybe you're going around life and you're getting by, right? You're looking at your finances, you're trying to make them into more, destabilize them in a good way. But in whatever job you're doing, you're finding that you feel like you're wrestling lions. It's an impossible task, right? A person wrestling a lion or struggling with, we might say fighting with a lion, don't do it, right? Don't do that. The cards are saying, instead of that, is there a career that you could grab onto so that you could stop, quote unquote, wrestling lions? 7 cups down here. 7 cups below 7 swords. 7 cups below 7 swords. So the emperor is maybe deceiving themselves, or maybe underneath it all is pretty focused, but at the bottom of it all wants to maintain their individuality and wants to kind of stand out in the crowd because that will make them feel fulfilled, nourished, right? We want cups. Lots of cups make us happy because we fill cups with the things that help us grow and help us flourish and help us thrive. Can we turn the swords, or how can we turn the swords into cups? I'm going to leave that as an open question for the moment. And the answer may be we drive around them. We find a way around them. That comes to mind, given that where we've got the Chariot card. Oh, we love to see the world. Okay, so underneath all this money is the world. 1 coin, 5 coins, and the world. And I can't help but notice the 5 coins and the visual rhyme between that and the position of the 5 figures on the world card, 1 in the center and then 1 in each corner of the card, as though we're seeing a movement. We're looking at 1 coin, underneath it 5, but below that it's not actually about the money, right? Like it looks like it, the appearance up here on top, it looks like it's about money, it's about a job. But the money really should be a means to an end, right? If you should, almost certainly shouldn't be going after the money for the sake of the money. You're going after money because the money gets you to the world, right? Where there isn't any money anymore here. But we've got the world, fulfillment, completion, and maybe the ending of something too, like a resolution here. It could be the end of one job and maybe the beginning of a career. That's what I think of. Let's draw a final card. It's another swords, and it's the Page of Swords. So this could be a message of conflict, right? An emissary sent out to do some, to make a communication, could be. Or it could be conflict. Swords can be either communication, the intellect, the mind, but we also fight with swords and defend ourselves with swords. And I can't help but see the way these figures transform force to the Queen of Batons, to the Page of Swords, who is looking directly at the figure in the center of the world. Very interesting. Okay, so a couple of thoughts I'm noticing, a couple of details I'm noticing about the spread. I'm noticing the way that the Emperor and the world, the figure in the center of the world, are both holding the baton in their left hand on our right. I'm noticing that the Queen holds it in her right hand. And I'm noticing the page holding the sword in the left hand. And so here's the story that I'm getting in this outside movement from the Emperor down here to the world. I'm seeing they've got one, let's call it a task, in their left hand, right? And they're doing that task because they need the money, right? They're working their job. Okay, and they've got some discipline, they've got some focus, but maybe they're also deceiving themselves that that job is going to allow them to maintain a sense of who they are, their individual self within the group. Maybe they're deceiving themselves, and all of their focus on this job is actually not getting them closer to these cups, and they're maintaining a clear sense of who they are and what really matters to them. Okay, but they're doing this job, right? But doing this job is getting harder and harder. They're having to be stronger and stronger to wrestle these lions every day. And it's not very fulfilling. And so they're thinking about starting a career, right? Making a change from this one coin job. Is there some way they could pick up a baton, right? And make a change, destabilizes everything, but would maybe get them some more coins while also lighting their fire, right? With the baton. Okay, what to do with these? Before they can get here, they need to gather more information, right? That's what the Page of Swords often does. It can be a message, but it can also be needing to do more research, right? So if we think of swords in terms of the intellect, the mind, and pages are just beginning a journey, right? This is the beginning of a journey of the mind, gathering information, learning something new, very much in the student phase. I suppose this could even mean going back to school, right? Becoming a student again, in order to have a career rather than this one coin job that's feels like wrestling lions. And so, is there a way that gathering more information, doing some research, learning something could elevate from the current position of being the emperor, right? But sort of all alone staring at the one coin, to down here in the world to turn themselves into this figure in the center of the world and to rise up, right? The emperor is on the ground, right? The figure in the world is almost floating in the air, almost like hovering. They're above the ground. They've risen up. They're elevated, and so I wonder if that is part of the journey that the emperor needs to take. And so to answer the question, right? Because the most important thing is to answer the question: how can I find a work-life balance? Well, I guess the answer is with the current job, um, you may need to get out of it. You may need to find a different job, find a career, which may involve study, which may involve doing some research on whatever career might interest you. Because I'm not sure that I see a way around wrestling more of these lions, and I'm not seeing more cups, which would make me think that you could be fulfilled, like emotionally or even spiritually fulfilled in your current position, right? He's deceiving himself by focusing on this job, but he's deceiving himself in thinking that underneath it all, there's really a bunch of cups that are fulfilling. So that's my answer for the first spread is how can you achieve a work-life balance? I'm not really sure that you can. We've got nothing but odd numbers here, except for the Emperor is a 4, but we've got a 1, 11, 5, 7, 7, 21, and even the card you chose, 7, right? So the Emperor wants balance, 4, but there is no card here that offers an even number that would find balance. Even these where we have a central where they're symmetrical, but I'm not sure that I'd say that they're balanced completely. And then here, we've just got the 1 coin. So is that balanced? I'm not convinced that it is. So there's not a lot of potential for balance here, unfortunately. So I would say make a change, right? And I suppose that is corroborated by the central card, which is the 5 of coins, which is all about things need to be destabilized. There needs to be a change in order to move forward towards harmony, right? Okay, I will stop the reading there. I hope this gives you a different perspective on your current situation. I hope at the very least it was kind of entertaining and you enjoyed it and enjoyed looking at the cards and hearing me talk about them. If this did give you something to think about, I very much appreciate a like and subscribe for some feedback so that I know you're getting something out of these and so that I'll know to keep doing them. I'll end it there, and thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye. Hello, Group 2. Welcome to your reading. You chose the Selenite. I love the way that it seems to glow from within. It's incandescent, I think is the word. And the sun. Beautiful pairing. So I'll set this aside. I've got the deck here, and I've been shuffling. I'm going now to continue shuffling and think about the question and think about its relationship to the Sun card. And so the question, of course, is how can you find or try to find or attain or make progress towards a work-life balance? And the Sun card, the first thing that this makes me think of, the fact that you've chosen this, I actually think of friendship, right? Do you have a friend or a friend group? Someone close to you, right? Not necessarily a partner, right? Not like a romantic interest, but just a friend. That is the first thing that comes to mind. I wonder if that would help in any way to achieve the balance that you are looking for. So let's just shuffle these a little more till I feel like they're really in the right place. And then, of course, I will do, in an open reading style, a portrait spread, 3 rows of 3. Okay, that feels good to me. Okay, let's see what we've got. Haha, the Wheel of Fortune, another major arcana pops up here. Okay, so Wheel of Fortune. So, one thing this makes me think of is, have you been able to find a rhythm, right? Like, are there certain tasks in life, maybe related to your work or not, that you can sort of do on autopilot, that you can do without having to think about them too much? And finding that rhythm, that could help you find a balance. But the other thing I think of is the wheel might be said to be balanced, in the sense that it's got a fixed center and spokes that come out, and it turns around in a balanced way, we might say, from that fixed center. But are these people or creatures or figures, are they balanced? And the one at the top is for now, but the second that wheel starts to turn, the balance is going to be totally thrown off. So this makes me think, like, are there circumstances outside of your control that are preventing balance from being maintained? Maybe you can achieve it momentarily, but can you achieve it for long periods of time? Maybe not. And it's quite a struggle. You feel like, you're having to fight a really unfair fight. That's what the 7 of Wands makes me think of. Struggle. You're here in the middle trying to do your thing, and you've got 6 wands crossing you. How are you supposed to stand up to them? This card can also signify anger. It's baton, so it's fire. There's fieriness there. It can be defending yourself, struggling. There might be some anger here. And judgment. Okay. Ooh. So, how do you find balance? Well, you wouldn't have clicked here. You wouldn't be here if you felt like you already had balance, right? So the wheel isn't saying that you're at the top. You're not the one who has the balance. You're one of these guys, right? You either feel like you've fallen down or maybe you're on your way back up again, but you haven't got balance. So how are you going to find it? Well, you're going to have to struggle. You're going to have to fight. Maybe channel some anger or passion that you might have in order to be reawakened, answer a call. I think it's really interesting that we've got 3 figures on the wheel, and those 3 figures, after passing through the 7 batons, wake up. They're coming out of the ground. They're coming out of the abyss, waking up from the dead, being reborn, being resurrected, right? Something has called to them. Something is asking them to respond. And it's 3 of them, not just 1. So I wonder if you and maybe some friends might be able together to join in on something that you all care about, to struggle through it and come out on the other side closer than you were before. And if that might help you find what you're looking for. 5 cups. So why is the wheel giving you these difficult circumstances, or what is the nature of these circumstances that are preventing you from achieving the balance you're after? And the answer is 5 cups, which has to do with a change of heart, a change of your feelings, your emotions, or maybe a change in your relationship. In a relationship, not necessarily a romantic one, though it could be that. This could be a breakup. This could also be grief. If you have lost someone, this card would indicate that, right? That you're struggling right now. Your heart, your soul is struggling right now and feels like it's going through a major change. Some of your cups have spilled, we might say, and the very difficult task is to recognize that they haven't all spilled, that you still have something fulfilling in your life. Oh dear, we've got a lot of majors coming out. So the Hanged One. In the center of the spread, oh, everything's upside down, isn't it? Well, that mimics the wheel. The difference is in the wheel, there are multiple figures. Here, you seem to be alone. Which brings me back to the sun and friendship again. Is the key to your finding balance, not to hang upside down on your own, but maybe to find others that you could hang upside down with, right? What is the nature of the struggle here? And the answer is it's the Hanged One, which can be sacrifice, which can be punishment, but which can also mean finding a point of view that nobody else shares. And maybe you've got that point of view now. Like maybe you see things from a unique perspective. Maybe it has to do with some loss that you've experienced, with some emotional troubles that you've gone through. And now you feel like the world's turned over, but it's given you a perspective nobody else seems to have. Can you struggle against all odds to find others who share that same or a similar kind of perspective? Right, like the first thing that comes to mind is if we were to interpret this card in terms of grief, the Five of Cups is you're grieving because you've lost someone and the world is upside down. Could you join like a grief support group, even if it's a struggle for you to get there, or even if it's a struggle to find one, or even if it's a struggle just because you don't want to do it? Maybe that's what you need, is to find other people who feel like they're upside down too, who feel like they're being reborn or reawakened at the same time, and maybe you could get a friend out of that. It's the Page of Cups. So this would be a card saying you should embrace your feelings. If there's any part of you that is trying to deny the difficult emotional experience that you've been through, this card is saying you need to embrace it. This is a message saying you need to embrace that. You're not going to be able to move on if you're not able to recognize that some of your cups have spilled, but you can still carry one with you. It's also a warning not to let your emotions totally overpower your life. That can happen to the Page of Cups sometimes. The Page of Cups has a lot to learn about how to control their emotions, about how to manage their emotions, about how to live their life, being aware of and informed by their emotions, but not being totally overpowered and controlled by them. And so the Page of Cups can be a dreamer who can be sort of oversensitive or even lost in a fantasy world. And we need to pay attention and watch out for that. This could also be a sense of feeling attacked, punished, like everybody's out to get you, like nothing you can do is right, and feeling sort of like a wounded child, almost like your inner child is wounded and needing to find a way to awaken from that in order to move on. King of Batons. Who is this? The King of Batons. Did this person cause the emotional difficulty. That's the first thing that comes to mind. The king here can be a leader, a thinker, a social person, someone who rules, but this baton represents their power. It can also be a weapon. Maybe not as efficient a weapon as a sword, but look there's a point on that. This could be used as a weapon. And so I wonder if this is someone who's caused an emotional disturbance in some way, right? Who's taken something from you. Or I guess this could also be the person, if we're talking about grief, this could be the person who's no longer with you for one reason or another. Oh, they went away? They've driven away. The King of Batons got in the chariot and is going somewhere. That's what I see here. These look so similar, the colors, the gray and red, and the shape of the chevron. So the King of Batons has left, perhaps, and that turned your world upside down? Is that what's happened? Oh, and a Knight of Batons. Okay, let's think about this for a moment, because we've got all these figures huddled together. Now, it makes sense that we would see a bunch of figures, especially given 3 here, the 3 here, and the 2 on the Sun card. So, I'm looking at the horse, and I'm looking at, so let's look at these 3 cards and then we'll compare them with the rest of the spread. The King of Batons is on their successful journey. Oh dear, I'm seeing it now. The King of Batons is making a great success of himself. They're driving forward. They've got 2 horses. They've got a big fancy chariot. They're on the road. They're going. They're standing up tall, and they are looking back at how far they've come. But they're not able to continue in the chariot. And they can't keep both of their horses. And they can't even remain a king. Something has happened. They've got to sell a horse. They've got to get rid of that chariot. And now they're just a knight. Now they're a knight, and they're riding around on one of their horses. So they've still got their movement. They can still get around, but not in their big fancy chariot anymore. And their decorated baton is now like the ace of batons. It's a big log. It's a big stick, isn't it? So downsizing. If you are in a situation maybe where you're working extra hours to pay for your big fancy car, maybe this is saying you need to trade that in for a less fancy car, or maybe you've got 2 cars and you need to get rid of one so that you can free up some funds so that you don't have to be working overtime all the time, or looking for a second job or pinching pennies or whatever it is to pay for that. So how can you achieve more of a work-life balance? Is there any way that you can limit or reduce the number of expensive possessions that you have, even if it makes you feel like you're not the king anymore? You could still be a knight, and that can be pretty cool to be a knight. Not everybody needs to be a king to be happy. So let me sum this up, because I think we've got at least 3 suggestions or possible answers here. The first one that I gave at the beginning was friendship. Okay, so do you have a friend you could reach out to? Could you work on making friends? And is that something that could provide balance to all the time that you're spending at work? It seems like there is an emotional disruption that you've had to go through that is preventing you from finding balance. And the only way out of that is going to be to struggle, and fight, not necessarily with others, it could be with yourself, right? Um, to get out there and be in a group, right? Find a friend group, find other people, preferably not related to work, although I suppose that they could be, right? They could be related to work, especially if we think maybe they're not related to work so much as a career, because when I think of batons, I think more of a career. So depending on where you're at, like if you're working a job, but it's not your dream, it's not your career, maybe you could find other people with interests in that same career and befriend them, right? Make friends with them. Um, if you're already in a career, then maybe it's going out for drinks after work, right? And it could be as simple as that. Or maybe you're going to, I think of the sound that the angel of judgment is making. Maybe you go to a concert together, right? Like see a music group together. That's the other thing that comes to mind. Don't let yourself get too caught up in your feelings. Acknowledge them, but don't let them totally turn your life upside down. That's the second idea, the second hint. And I think that's probably very much tied to friendship, right? Being around friends, as long as they're also not totally caught up in their feelings, right? Because bad feelings can feed off of each other. Friends can give you a perspective that you may not be able to see on your own, right? Other people, having relationships with other people, can give you the perspective you might need to pull yourself out of it if you're hanging upside down. And then finally, is there any way you can downsize, right? And maybe now is not the time to be a king. Maybe you should be a knight instead. Maybe instead of the big fancy place, big fancy car or 2 cars or whatever it is, maybe you go down to just the one horse instead. And instead of the big fancy scepter, right? Maybe you've got the one that works just fine and helps you look ahead, look forward. Okay. So these would be my suggestions for you. And I think I'll end it there. I hope that this gives you a new perspective, something new to think about, some new ideas. And at the very least, I hope it was entertaining and fun to look at these wonderful cards. I'll end it there. I thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing. And have a great day. See you next time. Hello, Group 3. Welcome to your reading. You chose the Flourite and Temperance, the Temperance card. So I'll set the Flourite aside. Here's Temperance. Temperance makes sense given this question about finding balance, because that seems to be what this figure is doing with their vessels, pouring water from one to the other. So I have my deck here, and I've been shuffling it prior to starting the recording, and I'll just continue to do some shuffling here so you can see while I think about the question and think about the card, think about Temperance. And so the question, of course, how can you find a work-life balance? How can you find a work-life balance? 2 ideas immediately come to mind just based off of the Temperance card that you chose. And so the first of those, they're a little contradictory. The first of those is, I think Temperance finds a middle path between 2 extremes, right? If you think about being temperate, It's about having some, but not too much. Not too little, not too much. The second idea that comes to mind is that what this figure is doing is actually impossible. If you consider, if you were to take two vessels, two vases or cups or whatever we want to call those, and pour liquid from one to the other, it certainly wouldn't look like this, right? Gravity would cause the liquid to fall straight down. It couldn't go at this angle. So Temperance, the figure, the angel of Temperance, is doing something impossible. So to what extent might that be true? We'll see what comes up in the cards. And a third thing is coming to mind, and that is that Temperance is the 14th card of the Major Arcana. And of course, we know that number 13 in many decks is unnamed, but in other decks is called Death. So Temperance comes after Death and before the Devil, we might add. Temperance is sometimes known as the card of healing. Temperance fixes things, heals things, makes things better after a great loss, after things have changed or transformed or even just transitioned in ways that are really difficult, that cut us, we might say. Temperance can come along and heal things. All right, let me shuffle just a little more. I'll finish this. I want a little more to make sure these are right. Okay, there it is. So, okay, let's see what we get. 9 coins, motivation, and being very comfortable, being independent, and on your own. So this makes me think of someone who is successful, who enjoys luxury, who enjoys and maybe has the funds to pay for things that others maybe can't afford. It's also possible with this card that there's some overspending happening, which would necessitate extra work at some point, right? Like this could indicate buying things you don't necessarily need, or buying a fancier version of something that you don't necessarily need. And so that would throw things out of balance, potentially. 5 coins. You guys. 9 to 5. Are you working 9 to 5? Is that what's happening here? What a way to make a living, as Dolly Parton would tell us. 9 to 5. Okay, so you're doing a lot of work, right? You're motivated, independent, successful, but maybe you need to consider reducing how much you're investing, how much of yourself you're investing in your job, even if that requires a change. 5 is change, a change in your material circumstances. 4 swords, you need a rest. Is there any way you could take a vacation? Is there any way you could take a staycation? Is there any way that you could pull back briefly, temporarily, in order to find some balance? Do you have unused vacation time that you're not taking? Maybe you should be taking it, because you need to put some boundaries up, some restrictions up around yourself in order to keep from burning out. This beautiful flower. So we've got, this is the biggest flower. No, maybe this is bigger. This is bigger, taller anyways. We've got foliage, we've got flowers here. They're smaller here because you're working 9 to 5. You're working a lot of hours. But if we could isolate that flower, put some restrictions up around it temporarily, the flower could grow. The flower could become bigger, and this little red thing makes me think of a fruit, like it could be fruitful, right? To take a rest, to take a break, to restrict yourself from working. Are you a workaholic? Workaholic? Is that the 9 to 5? Is it that you're a workaholic and you need to, in your mind, because swords are the mind, put up some restrictions around the hours that you're working? Okay, so underneath your independence, your motivation, your 9 coins, we have the magician. You're working your magic. You have the resources you need in order to do the things you're trying to do. You're clever. You're cunning. You're able to perform if you need to perform and for people. But you can't see everything. That's the thing about the magician. The magician is at the beginning of the journey. The magician is at the, number 1 of the major arcana, and they're not able to see everything. Notice the magician looks backwards rather than forwards. Not as forward thinking as maybe they could be. The emperor, on the other hand, does look forward. So, are you lacking some structure, stability, and discipline so that you can sit down, rest on your laurels a little bit, instead of having to stand up all day, hawking your wares in the street, being clever with people, maybe even doing some tricks, some illusions to make things appear differently than they really are? That's what the magician does, right? The magician can make things look any way they need to, whether that's how they really are or not. The emperor, on the other hand, has control over how things actually are, right? At least within his domain. I feel like this goes down here. 10 cups. Ooh, look at what the emperor is looking at. Okay, so we love this card, don't we? This is happy, happy, happy. This is as many cups as you can get on any one card. Almost too happy, depending on the context of the question. If the magician could become the emperor, he could be looking at great happiness. So what is the difference between the magician? I mean, I explained it a moment ago a little bit, but well, you know what? Rather than rehashing it, let's lay down more cards. Let's see what's underneath the magician and emperor and see what that gets us. So underneath the magician, we have the Page of Cups, who is looking at temperance. So you're on your feet, you're working, you're doing your thing, you're selling your stuff, you're talking to people, you're making illusions, you've got your game going, right? And underneath that, it's maybe because of a certain sensitivity that you have, maybe a woundedness that you have and that you want to heal. This poor Page of Cups with his head down, looking at his cup and looking past temperance, who could heal, who could do the impossible of healing. So are you going here like the magician, hustling, doing your thing, getting your vibe, because part of you is wounded, right? Like, did you ever feel like you weren't good enough? Did that wound you, and it needs to be healed so that you could become an emperor? More coin. We've got a lot of coins. 7 of them here. So the 7 of coins is kind of a notoriously difficult card for people to interpret. And there are certainly many ways of interpreting it. In the Tarot de Marseille, I tend to read it in terms of acceptance. So if you imagine what the 6 of coins looks like, we would have a beautiful, balanced harmony of 6 coins, right? But here we've got a 7th one, and the 6 have to accept the 7th. And the foliage is sort of trying to keep it in, but it's also kind of isolated and out. So do you need to accept something about yourself? Accept something having to do with the Page of Cups. So like the pathway here is, if underneath the magician, they feel like the wounded Page of Cups, the oversensitive Page of Cups who had a dream and could never achieve it, do they need to accept that? Accept that that's what's making them hustle, 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 go, 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 in order to find some real stability, some structure to their life, so that they can get here, so that they can get their 10 cups, their real happiness. Let's see what the last card is. 10 batons. So underneath our 10 cups are 10 batons. This can be a great burden, too much to carry, burning out. Right? It's the most fire you can have. It's the fire has grown so big that it's burning out, especially in this context. In another context, I would read it differently, right? It could mean loyalty. It could mean great passion. And it could mean that here, like passion for a career, given this context, if you have a great passion for a particular career. But, even a great passion for a career can burn out. So you've got to be careful of that. I think you're a workaholic is really the sense that I'm getting from this, because it's like, even if you get your 10 cups, even if you get the most fulfillment and happiness that you could find, underneath it is a fire that is burning that makes you want to go, go, go. And so I think what needs to happen to find balance, beyond maybe taking a vacation, which I would always recommend, maybe you need a little rest and relaxation, put some restrictions up. But beyond that, that would be a temporary fix, I think. It's in the top row. So this is like the more superficial level of things. But if we look down lower, right, if we really look down in the corner, this, I think, is kind of at the root of what's preventing balance from happening. There's something about yourself you're having trouble accepting. And it's the Page of Cups. It has to do with your emotions. It could, I suppose, also have to do with a relationship, right? The Page of Cups could be a message about a relationship that you haven't accepted and that you're going to have to find a way to accept. One other interpretation of the 7 of coins, which I didn't mention earlier but is coming to mind now, is going through a transition and trying to decide all the investing you've done, all the work you've done, all the value that you've put into something, whether it's, I'm thinking probably your job, right? Was it worth it? Is it paying off? Are you getting the fruits of your labor? Or like, and it's an open question, right? This card doesn't necessarily say the answer to that is yes or no, but it suggests you're wondering, is this 9 to 5? Is this getting you what you want? Is it leading you towards 10 cups? Or is it actually just leading you towards 10 batons? It's leading you towards burnout. All the work is leading towards burnout. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I'm really happy with the way this reading turned out. I hope that it gave you some perspective, made you think of something different, maybe can help you make a change in your life if that's what you're looking for. If you appreciated this reading, if it did something for you, please consider commenting, liking, and subscribing. I appreciate the feedback. This is a new channel, and I need to know how people are reacting to it. So I would appreciate any feedback you'd care to give. And I'll end it there. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in your next reading.